Well, let's get more on that story. Joel Braunold joins us from Washington. He's Executive Director of the Alliance for Middle East Peace, which promotes better relations between Arabs and Jews. Joel, good to have you with us. So when we look at what this plan is aiming to do, which is doubling Palestinian GDP within 10 years, creating 1 million jobs, bringing down the unemployment rate, is that achievable?
You know, I think it's very difficult to analyze Mr. Kushner's plan without the political context. It's achievable if, Palestinians have access to parts of the West Bank that the Israelis haven't allowed them to. It's achievable if the political circumstances allows it to flourish. Many of the ideas in Mr. Kushner's document are ideas that have been presented by the RAND Corporation, by the Quartet, by the World Bank, but they've always been stuck by the politics. So without seeing the political aspect of this plan, it's almost impossible to gauge whether this is possible or not.
Yeah, I mean, the Trump administration says, look, we've been trying to sort the politics of this for decades and we've never got anywhere. So let's start with something like the economy and move on from there. I mean, is that a credible way of trying to resolve such a complex issue as tensions in the Middle East?
All of these things are necessary. Economic development is necessary. Civil society reconciliation is necessary. All of this is necessary, but with a political horizon. In the last administration, when Secretary Kerry was going through his proximity talks, there was a $4 billion proposal on the table, and the Palestinian Authority, the Palestinian business community were all engaged, and it fell apart. Using economics is not new, and growing from 4 billion to 50 billion is not new. These are all the ideas that have been mooted for the past 25 years. The problem often has been, what is the political horizon? Mr. Kushner and the Trump administration have cut off aid through USAID to bilateral programs, some of which are put in this report. So the wastewater projects, the transportation projects, the education projects, these are all things that USAID were doing before the Trump administration cut them off. Understanding the economics of this only makes sense within a political construct. Saying that here's $50 billion of investment, but not understanding how that will be implemented, what's the political context, who controls the money, all of these aspects are essential to analyze this. So to have a conference that has united the fractious Palestinian polity against it is clearly a failure. And not having Israeli officials or Palestinian officials at a conference about improving the Palestinian economy clearly is not the correct way about launching this first stage of the peace process if you want to be successful.
Yeah, I wanted to ask about that because it does seem as though Kushner is selling this plan to other Arab states, but the Palestinians aren't there. The Palestinians have totally rejected this plan. It does seem as though the US doesn't care whether the Palestinians are on board with this plan or not, as long as everyone else is.
So Mr. Greenblatt has said constantly on Twitter, about the need to, if they can't work with the Palestinian Authority, can they work with the business community? Is there a way to work around them? At the conference, it seems there are very few Palestinian members of the business community. There are a few, but even US law current to date prevents the US from funding anything that will benefit the Palestinian Authority, even if they don't directly fund it. So I don't even see how the US can fund their own proposal. If the aim is to go around with a literature review and a tin cup, fine, but that isn't new or innovative. I think that if the Kushner team wants to be successful, re-looking at where the populations are up to, the deep levels of fear and mistrust amongst the youth of Israelis and Palestinians needs to be tackled. Of course, growing the Palestinian GDP is essential. Of course, dealing with unemployment and all of these issues is a necessary factor. But by divorcing it from the politics, all you do is pollute what is a necessary factor by indicating that this could be an economic peace alone. And I know whereas Mr. Kushner and Mr. Greenblatt and others have constantly claimed, just wait until the political side of this comes out, it's very difficult for those of us who look on the ground and look at the US actions with cutting off aid to UNRWA and cutting off aid to USAID by closing down UNRWA. All of these actions indicate a direction of travel. When Ambassador Friedman says that he could understand why Israel would annex part of the territories, it becomes difficult.
and we are hoping to hear from Jared Kushner himself in a short while. So we'll see what he has to say. But in the meantime, Joel, thank you very much indeed for that. Joel Braunold there in Washington.